Okay, so someone sent me like this video with like Wolf talking about the whole like Jenning and VGC and like the disqualifications at Worlds thing. So I mean, like I'm just kind of going to watch like the little segment he does and just kind of give like my just more so a reaction and like my overall honest opinion. I mean, like hopefully no one takes anything I say the wrong way. I'm just gonna give my honest opinion about things I see because I haven't watched this at all. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Is that at this year's World Championships, there were a record number of disqualifications for players using hacked Pokemon. I'm gonna move.
Okay, so just to be clear, I mean, like, it's not necessarily just hacked Pokemon, and we went over this, and like, it was mainly the thing with like home trackers. So basically, and I'll summarize like this: home trackers are in place when you put a Pokemon through Pokemon Home. However, what got a lot of players like disqualified is they had Pokemon that had no record of going through Pokemon Home. So let's say you got like an Urshifu, and I got a video about it. I'll put the link in the description. If you have an Urshifu in Scarlet and Violet, at the time of making this, Urshifu in Scarlet and Violet can only have came from Sword and Shield. So what some of these players did, they had basically like Urshifus, Ursalunas, and they gen them directly into Scarlet and Violet. If you do that, there's no record of these Pokemon having went through home, and therefore it's an easy flag.
A little slower through this one because I want to be careful because I think that when talking about this subject, it's for some reason very
My
contentious
dog's
in
like
Pokemon. Well, not
being
for some
crazy.
reason. I know why. Basically, I think that there are more or less two bad actors in the space who I think that there are two bad actors in the Pokemon, Pokemon space broadly who maybe there are more, at least two.
So I feel like he's talking about Velicify, and I'm guessing the other one might be Kurt. But I feel like that's just like a whole just like misinterpretation of like Kurt making the tweets about like people getting caught. Which I mean, like I don't know why people don't just go to like the PKX Discord. I'm not saying people need to go there and like be annoying or whatever. I don't know why people don't just go to like the PKX Discord and be like, hey, why do you make these tweets? I mean, some people have done it before or just like reach out, but I feel like, and I'm not saying these are his intentions at all, but I feel like a lot of people would rather not just like go and talk to Kurt and would rather keep him as like this like adversarial person or whatever. And obviously, Velicify, most people know Velicify. Like,
who basically their primary way of remaining relevant is by like instigating bad faith discussion around this topic, and because it's their way of staying relevant, it's like things are kind of sensationalized, things are taken out of context, and things are not really represented fairly because that's not
okay, so yeah, I definitely think he's probably talking about Velicify. I don't really know how he'd be talking about Kurt when like Kurt uses like stats and stuff to basically represent the data. It's he's using raw data, not just like going off of a whim. So I don't think he's talking about Kurt. If he is talking about Kurt, then I think it's kind of like maybe it's just like just a lack of understanding of what exactly the tweets represent. But
not in their own best interest. So I want to be careful with what I say here because yeah, like I don't think I will not be I will not be given the benefit of the doubt. I will not be interpreted fairly. I will be given the worst faith interpretation. So I mean, it's gonna happen anyway. But like, I may as well try and be at least precise with my words so that most people can pick apart what I'm trying to say. So okay, what exactly happened here, and what is a hacked Pokemon? Let's start from that. So there, there is a program that I believe is, unless they've changed it recently, I believe it's. Actually, you don't need the name. You don't need the name. It's not relevant here. There is a program that allows players to generate Pokemon with the correct stats, items, moves, etc. that they want into their game. And this is commonly referred to as hacking or genning a Pokemon.
okay, so one thing I don't like here is just kind of like I know he didn't say the name, but just kind of like the acting. I'm probably interpreting bad faith. He some people might, but it's just like it just seems like the acting of like it's called blah blah blah. It just kind of seems like we all know, everybody knows like when you're this top of a player and stuff like that, you know what the program is called. I just like I don't like the whole kind of like acting like it's like when like you have like an issue with somebody and then like they're like, "Oh, do I know you?" When like you know they know you, it's like it's just weirdly kind of weird.
Pokemon. So it's worth noting that these Pokemon are not stronger. They don't give you any kind of competitive advantage in the game. But they can be like generated without grinding for them, without going through the process of actually getting them. And there are players who compete in official tournaments who use these Pokemon. Now, this is the first kind of, I think, difficult part of the discussion, which is that this is not cheating. It is hacking. It is against the rules, but it is not cheating. It does not give you an unfair advantage. These Pokemon are not stronger in any way. They're not.
Yeah, I mean he's right, and like I think like this is where like the like I said the argument gets kind of like annoying and kind of tough because like it breaks the rules. Is it cheating? I think that cheating is definitely like up to interpretation because the main reason why people gen and the reason I support it is because it cuts down on time. Time is the ultimate thing that really like cuts down. So, I mean, like if you've ever battled competitively, and I think most people can agree, you get more, you can get better, but you're not going to get like world championship level and stuff like that. And like, I'm not saying that like having less time grinding will make you this ultimate master or whatever, but I think that like the cut down on time helps you actually be able to play test the team, practice and all this other stuff because like you need that time to know what to do in like XYZ situation and stuff like that. You can't just like make a team and then just like jump in to a big tournament with like no experience. You need that time to actually play. And like that's where Jenning comes in. Jenning cuts out that grind to give you more time to play. So there is an advantage. The advantage is time, but it just depends on, like I said, time is going to be different for everybody, and time is not that great equalizer. Like me practicing for 2 hours compared to somebody practicing for 14 hours doesn't mean that that person who practiced for 14 hours is going to be inherently better than me. So I think that's where like the discussion gets a little muddied and a lot of people don't really understand. And I made this point to somebody the other day. It's like think of like a chessboard. So let's say me and you have a chess match, but in order for us to play, we have to bring our own chess pieces. You went to the store and bought your chess pieces. I handmade my chess pieces because you. This is probably would be a bad example because nobody hand makes chess pieces, but just you see where I'm going. So because you had bought your piece from the store, you're able to play against people, and you're kind of you have the advantage of practicing and stuff like that. Me, because I had the extra time to, I had to put that time in to make my pieces. I didn't really have that same time to actually test out and practice. But when we play, I win. Does that necessarily mean that like because I grinded that I'm a better person? And does that mean that because he didn't grind that he's worse? No, not necessarily, because at the end of the day, it's about inherent skill and about like a base level of understanding. I can gen every team in the world and I can still suck. But I can grind out and make my team and I can still be good, and vice versa. So like what it really comes down to, it comes down to meta understanding and situational understanding. That is the ultimate thing. There is no notion that more time practicing means you're going to be this great player. But I do think that more time practicing will give you like a larger variance of how good you can, a larger average variance of how good you can be. So he probably going to address this, but I kind of just like, I want to kind of like make that clear.
Like, I don't know, better equipped for the tournament. The only difference between a Pokemon that is generated and the Pokemon that has been obtained legitimately is in the time that it took to get them. But once they're in the actual tournament, no meaningful, no difference at all. This is against the rules, however, and so if you do choose to use a Pokemon that has been hacked into the game, you're always risking disqualification. Oh, I guess I should probably be, just for the sake of completeness, I should be a little bit more, should go a little deeper before we move on. So, I say this is not cheating because it does not give you an unfair advantage. The Pokemon that are used are the exact same. Full disclosure, by the way, I get all my own Pokemon. I do not hack in my Pokemon. There have been times, sake of transparency, sake of like being fully honest, there have been times in the past where I have used Pokemon that were traded to me that I believed were legitimate. And in the past, some of those Pokemon probably weren't. Even though I trusted the people, like
Yeah, and it's like, do I think that? I mean, I'm going for his word for it that he's being honest about the stuff, but like, yeah, like you can still win championships with all legit teams. Like, it's not impossible. Like, I know plenty of players. I know a player who went to Worlds with a completely legit team, made it to top 16, I believe. It's just like it's not impossible, so don't think that it is impossible. But yeah, like if you're getting stuff from other people, that does kind of like cut out the grind. So I can see definitely some people do have issues with that because one thing with top players is like people give you Pokemon. Like if you're kind of like a player that's not really well known and stuff like that, you're going to have to grind and stuff like that. But like a lot of top players, people will make teams for them. So it's just like it cuts out that grind. It's just like you got your fan base or whatever. So people do have issue with that, and I can definitely respect somebody having issue with that. But I think also that's why in the rules they bring up the fact that you can't even really trust Pokemon that you get from outside sources because if even if those Pokemon are legal, that still breaks the rules. But again, I think the term cheating and breaking the rules, I feel like that's a semantics issue or whatever.
the only way that I can be sure that my Pokemon are all legitimately obtained are if is it like if I
My
get them
dog's
myself.
like staring at me.
And yeah, like if you trade for any Pokemon, then there's a chance that they might not be legit. But yeah, like I
Oh
do not
no.
knowingly bring Pokemon that are oops, my bad. Uh, I get all my own Pokemon and I do it all myself just to make absolutely sure. In the past, there have been times where I have been traded a Pokemon that was not legitimate, but I have never been disqualified from an event. I have never even lost a Pokemon from an event due to a hack check. So, yeah, I think that like,
So to be fair, we know that. I mean, like if I mean it's this was a while ago, but like Ray Rizzo had a Pokemon that it passed the hack check in game. Everybody knows it was like it was Jin because of the bad ball, and he still was champion. So you got to keep in mind that like yeah, like just because you pass the hack check does not mean that you didn't have Jin Pokemon. And I think that's like what a lot of people really need to understand. The in game there's different levels of hack check. You have Holmes hack checker, which is the one that really got people messed up because and you have the in-game hack checker, and then you have like PKX hack checker, which is like these are three different levels that all do three things differently. But like I said, the ultimate way is to make sure that your Pokemon are all legitimate. But yeah, but let's be clear that like just because you pass a hack checker does not mean that your things are all like there's no possibility that your stuff is not ginned or anything like that. Just gotta really emphasize that.
like a record of over 10 plus years speaks for itself. So this isn't something that I personally benefit from. If anything, it actually is quite problematic. I'd rather that like it just wasn't possible to hack in these Pokemon because again, bad faith actors as well as the fact that like it would just make things a lot like I don't care if people hack in their Pokemon personally, to be honest. Like it doesn't affect me. However, like there's so much bad faith discussion around this topic that yeah, like it would be easier if it wasn't possible, but it is.
Yeah, it's bad faith on both sides. 'Cause I think that like seeing a lot of like players like kind of come out and saying stuff to like kind of condone it, which I mean I support Jenning completely, but seeing people just kind of like they absolve themselves of responsibility when it's like you signed up for these rules, you chose to break the rules. Only person you should be able to blame is yourself. That's the ultimate thing. You should only blame yourself. And so I get that, but like on the other side, also you have people that are kind of like super anti-Jenning who are just like really toxic about the whole thing and really just like makes this situation like really bad. But it's just like I said, I've been in the community like for about 10 years also, and it's just like things have flipped. If you were around back before like Sword and Shield era, the you didn't see so many players come out and be super vocal about Jenning and fully in support. It was the complete opposite because in like this is one of the things like it might get touched on later, and I think that like one of the reasons is like people try to blame Kurt for all this stuff. PKX has been around since the beginning. However, the massive availability to be able to gen mons on a personal level and stuff like that didn't start until Sword and Shield era. So you can't really say, oh yeah, Kurt made this all possible, and literally like only the availability changed since then. That's the only difference. PKX have been around forever. It's nothing has changed. It's just the availability.
Possible. with that out of the way, the reason why I say that it's not an unfair advantage is because the thing that like hacking in a Pokemon saves is time, which is not relevant in the actual tournament itself. And if you want to argue that like, I don't know, like the time that you save by hacking in a Pokemon versus like getting it legitimately is an unfair advantage, I think that you have to take a step back and think like, is it an unfair advantage in competitive Pokemon to be unemployed? Like, as the person who I don't know, works 80 hours a week and hacks in their Pokemon, do they have an unfair advantage?
Yeah, and he's right here, because that's the reason why people gym, because like a lot of these people, like they are actually like they're in school, work, unless they're like full-time content creators who also like play tournaments, then yeah, like they don't really have all that time available to them to dedicate to Pokemon. And also with how fast metas change, you might, and I mean, nobody just runs one team. You're going to adapt to the meta, make changes as necessary and stuff like that. Like if you've played competitive Pokemon, you know that it is a constant revolving door and constant changes and stuff like that. So you got to really take instance of that. So like you said, like somebody who's unemployed probably does have an advantage because they have all this time to make teams and stuff like that. So again, like I said, time is an advantage, but it is not this end all be all greatest thing and equalizer for things.
Over the person who, I don't know, is like off for the summer not doing anything and get all their Pokemon legitimately, right? I don't think that you can
My dog's like staring at me.
Time, and I don't think that that's an even starting resource to begin with. And so I think that to argue that it's an unfair advantage to generate Pokemon that were like not obtained legitimately.
Switch to Chrome to securely
ads.
Store your passwords so you can sign in with just a click.
I think it's a really bad faith argument. It also, yeah, like I mean, we don't need to go any deeper.
I don't really think it's bad faith. Exactly. I think it's perspective based to a degree. I think that like if you're someone who is, I think it's one of those things, like I said, it's perspective based to a certain degree. I think overall it is not like an inherent disadvantage or unfair. But like let's say you're somebody who plays legit, you're in school, XYZ, and then you see all these players who are in the same exact situation, but they're breaking the rules. So I can definitely see someone who is in that situation doing everything legit just not be too receptive to people who gen and stuff like that, because they're putting in the time, they're doing things the correct way, and then they see people who are also doing it in their same situation but just breaking the rules. So I don't think it's bad faith. I think that it's definitely something that is perspective based for each individual person. Like I can't speak on someone else's situation and how they choose to play the game to give the notion that it is bad faith for a person to say that it is unfair that someone gens.
Deeper than that. That's my opinion. It's not factual. It's just what I think. I don't think that like hacking in your Pokemon gives you an unfair advantage by any means. Personally, and I still, despite that, choose to get on my Pokemon legitimately, because I don't ever want to risk disqualification, because I work really hard to prepare for tournaments, and to not like get the Pokemon themselves to me seems like an unnecessary risk, especially because I don't know how to hack Pokemon myself, and so therefore I would
so Jesus Christ, hopefully when I gets pissed when I say this, I'm gonna call Cap. I'm definitely gonna call Cap. I'm not saying that he gens Pokemon, but I'm gonna say that like I think this is one of those things where just should have just like not been said. It'd be like, oh, I don't know how to gen. Like, I just gotta call Cap on that one.
Would always be risking disqualification because I wouldn't know even how to do it properly. So, with that being said, this year at the World Championships, it was announced that Pokemon's hack check was maybe not announced officially, but it was basically distributed in advance that the hack check was a lot more advanced, that they'd managed.
Yeah, so basically like a lot of players in North America specifically that I've seen, maybe other players in other regions got the email, but they got the email basically saying like, hey, the hack check's going to be stronger, and that you also need to make sure that all your stuff was obtained legitimately by you. So, and like the thing is like also, and this is where it comes down to like, if you're going to be genning stuff, you need to also be educated on legality. We've known that Pokemon Home flag stuff since Pokemon Home came out. This has been known. And also when Scarlet and Violet came out and Home came out, things seem to have been like a lot more stringent, where it's like, stringent might be the wrong word, a lot more strict, where if you have stuff with invalid home data and you put it into home will clear out its metadata completely. And so this is stuff that's been known. I mean, I can't speak on everybody's situation, whether or not they knew this stuff, but at the end of the day, if you're going to gen stuff and take it to competitions, you need to understand legality.
To upgrade the quality of the hack check. And so in the past, whereas Pokemon that were like not obtained legitimately, but were like totally fine in terms of their stats, items, moves, etc. Like it wasn't like they had a Pikachu with 999 speed or whatever. These Pokemon would pass the hack check. This year it was said like, we're not telling you exactly what, but the hack check is going to be more strict. And that's what was said. And for my friends and I, it didn't really matter because like we were not going to risk it anyway. Just because like there's no, in my opinion, there's no point.
Dog.
But a lot of players either didn't like know about the warning or didn't really realize how intense the hack check was going to be. For whatever reason, they still chose to bring.
I mean, I think it's also a lot of it was just arrogance. Just looking at the stuff that was seen on like Twitter and some of the like things that some of these players would say, I think a large part of it was in fact due to just arrogance. Like just like thinking like, oh, well, we didn't get caught before, even though they sent us email. I mean, like we know what we're doing. It's fine.
Pokemon that were obtained not legitimately to the tournament, and there were a lot of disqualifications. I don't really need to focus on any one person in particular because I don't see the point in that. But yeah, there were a lot of disqualifications, and many players were very, very upset about it. So I think that this is a take that's not going to make anybody happy, to be honest. I think that the VGC players aren't going to be happy.
Hopefully he makes the right take here. I feel like he is.
Oh, this is also something worth noting, which is that a lot of the discussion around this topic comes from people who do not play competitively. In fact, within the competitive community, it's pretty broadly accepted that like using like Pokemon that were not obtained via normal gameplay means, it's not ideal, but I don't think nobody within the community views it as an unfair advantage. People view it as hacking, but they don't view it as cheating. Not that everybody does it, again, because many people like myself either don't know how or don't want to risk it, which I think is like the stance of quite a few people in the community. But a lot of the people who feel that this is very morally wrong do not play in tournaments. In fact, it's almost all of them do not play in tournaments. I have more to say on this later, but that's a point for later. So my stance that it's going to make nobody happy.
Oh, if he's not talking about Kurt, I know who else he's talking about completely. Because, yeah, I know who he's talking about.
Happy, which is that I think that, like, it's unfortunate that, so many players got disqualified. At the same time, like, we were warned. You know what I mean? Like, we were given a heads up, and, like, I think it sucks that players got disqualified, but, like, at the same time, every time you bring a hacked Pokemon to a tournament, you were risking disqualification, and, like, I think that it's unfortunate for people to like have to learn the lesson at Worlds, but I think that like it's a lesson to be learned, which is that like the only way you can ensure that you're not going to get disqualified is to not bring the hacked Pokemon, right?
And this is the completely accurate take that, like I said, I wish so many people would actually make. You guys are warned. You also know that that these are the rules for forever. You chose to break the rules. Don't blame other people. I mean, if you're going to blame anybody for the reason you need to gen and stuff, blame Pokemon. Do that. Point the fingers at them and the fact that they make these games so annoying that you feel the need that you have to gen. Stop pointing the finger to everybody else. Stop making these extreme arguments. I saw people compared to like the Holocaust and like slavery, all kinds of insane stuff. You can only really account for yourself and the choices that you make in regards to this stuff. No one is forcing you. Like I've seen people like, oh yeah, like, well, Kurt should just cancel VGC not VGC. Kurt should cancel PKX if he doesn't want people using Gen Pokemon. He's not putting a gun to your head to make you do it. He's not creating the environment to where you need to do this. PKX is so much more than just genning Pokemon. So when I hear people, and it's kind of like using his argument, the people that say that PKX was only made to genning Pokemon are the people who do not really know all the stuff that goes into PKX. These are people who don't even know like Project Pokemon exists and stuff like that. Like these are people who just really aren't. All they know is this thing. It's like, here's another analogy that might be bad. It's like McDonald's sells other stuff besides hamburgers and cheeseburgers, but McDonald's is really known for cheeseburgers. So a lot of people, if you only buy cheeseburgers from McDonald's, you might not know about all the other things on the menu. Hopefully that works. Let me know in the comments if this is a bad analogy or not. But let's go ahead and continue.
Yeah, I mean, it's not maybe not as sympathetic as people would like me to be, but like,
No,
I don't know. Like,
I mean it sucks, and like I feel sorry for the fact that like yeah it happened at Worlds, but again, you took that responsibility. You chose to do this, and most of these people are adults and stuff like that. This is the responsibility you signed up for, and the consequences you signed up for. So you can only really blame yourself. It sucks that like yeah you spent like almost a year of like traveling and all this stuff just to get DQ'd. But hey, I mean it's the rules you signed up for that you broke willingly.
like it is against the rules. I don't think it's an unfair advantage, but it is against the rules, and so you like if you choose to bring hacked Pokemon, you are risking disqualification at any event. And even though it hasn't really happened like that much for specific types of hacked Pokemon in the past, you're still risking it. And I think that was a risk that people should have been aware of. And like, yeah, I mean, it sucks. I feel bad for the players who were disqualified, but like there was a warning, and I don't know, like it's like I don't want to say it's on you because I think that that's really
No, it's on you. It's on you.
Like
Like
to be learned. I think that like, you know, whenever you choose to bring hacked Pokemon to a tournament, you're risking this. So like, maybe don't bring hacked Pokemon to a tournament if you care about, you know, if you're not willing to take the risk, right? Especially to the World Championships,
Like I said,
which I think for many of us who are competing is a tournament that we care deeply about. So that's my take on that. But there is a broader point here actually, which is why do so many players choose to hack on their Pokemon? Why were there I mean, there were so many disqualifications because a lot of players chose. Okay, also like when I say so many, it wasn't in the hundreds. I think maybe it was like, I don't really know. I want to say maybe like around 20 people, which is still a lot, like for sure, but it wasn't.
so I wouldn't say like I think it might have been 20 people DQ'd, but it's definitely a lot more than that because the people that got DQ'd are the ones that ginned badly. However, I mean, like I said, I've talked to VGC players, like they're in my Discord and other stuff like that, and like people have like asked questions in like the PKX server, and we've told people the proper way to do things. I think the people that got caught are the ones that were either very sloppy because it is harder to gin badly than it is to gin correctly, or they're either just arrogant. I think those are the only two things.
It wasn't like half the field or anything. We weren't, you know, like it wasn't like that, but yeah, like yeah, it wasn't like I lost my train of thought. It wasn't that it was enough people that it was a lot more than normal. It was not like the entire field, just to be clear. Broader point here, which is that why are players choosing to hack on their Pokemon? Are they lazy? Are they like super risk takey, right? And the answer is that Pokemon at the moment is not accessible. In fact, maybe accessible is the wrong word. In order to get a team of competitive Pokemon legitimately is a not only super time consuming endeavor, it's also an expensive one. So for the most part for Scarlet, like each game has gotten better when it comes to accessibility in terms of getting the Pokemon that you want easily. For my Worlds team, it took me probably about 3 hours, if that, to get everything like fully like ready to go.
Okay, that's good. I thought he was going to say like some exaggerated number, but like, yeah, 3 hours is around how long it takes for you to make a team breeding wise, and like all the other extra stuff like EVs, as long as you've been like playing the game like that. But like, there's some like instances with like Enamorus, which is a really popular Pokemon that you have to get from Legends Arceus. I mean, soft resetting isn't a thing because you can't see IVs in Legends Arceus, and also the only way to see IVs, you'd have to send it to home. So, which means in order for you to constantly soft reset to get like, let's say, a 0 attack IV or 0 speed IV Enamorus, you have to keep replaying the game, which is extremely annoying, which I think that you should have like some kind of mechanism in the game to where you can get 0 IVs. Like that should be in the game regardless.
Granted, I'd caught a lot of the Pokemon already, but like basically for the most part, games have gotten better and better every single year at like helping you get the Pokemon legitimately without too much headache. There were some small steps backwards in recent years, but for the most part, it's far, 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 far easier now to get a team of legitimately obtained Pokemon without too much headache. For anyone curious as to how I recommend doing this, if you stockpile resources at some point, I typically do this when the game comes out, just like,
hey, attention
Another
everyone.
ad.
I've been trying to catch the Pontiac Bandit for 8 years.
All right. I'm not paying for YouTube
grind
Premium.
raids, like do a ton of stuff, etc., like get all the in-game resources. You'll pretty much be set for a whole year, and then each year you might have to refresh a little bit. I'm actually in this stage right now. I am fully out of grass, water, and steel terra shards, so I have been fighting many raids, but that's not really the point, right? You stockpile resources, and for most Pokemon in the game, you can then pretty easily get them trained up. You can affect their stats to make them higher. You can change their natures. EV training is very easy, in my opinion, and then if you have like in-game currency, like the actual money or whatever, which you've grinded, then you can get most other things pretty easily in terms of the held items. So that takes care of all that stuff. And if we were playing on the same rule set that we started Scarlet and Violet with, I don't think that there would be really any excuse for hacking in your Pokemon, because everything would be pretty acceptable.
I think he's gonna make the
Problem
point
is
about
that there are
legendaries.
a lot of Pokemon that you cannot obtain in Scarlet and Violet that are dominating the format. Pokemon like Urshifu,
Yep.
Pokemon like Landorus, Pokemon like Ursaluna, right? These are all Pokemon that you need an external game for. And for example, if you want to use a team,
And these are the Pokemon that affected people when it came to home tracker data. Because since, the accessibility problem, people just gen them directly into Scarlet and Violet without home tracker data and boom, get flagged.
with like, I don't know, like Enamorus, or let's say you want to use Ursaluna, Cresselia, Urshifu, and then 3 Pokemon that are native to Scarlet and Violet, you would need not only a copy of Scarlet and Violet, that's $60. You would need Sword and Shield, another $60. You would need the DLC, $30. You would also need Legends Arceus, another $60. Not to mention the fact that like travel is expensive. Entering a tournament fees have gone up astronomically. When I started playing, they were free to enter. Then they jumped to $20, then $25, etc., etc. Entering a tournament now costs you $70. Not to mention the cost of the Swiss. Not to mention for bigger tournaments, they start on a Friday, and even for smaller tournaments, like maybe you have to like take off work for a day, either on Friday or on Sunday or on Monday, to get back home. Pokemon is unfortunately a very expensive hobby, and one of the ways around this, of course, is if it were easier to get the Pokemon in the game. And when Pokemon that you, when the best competitive Pokemon are Pokemon that aren't even native to the game, it forces players to either spend a lot of money, like a lot of additional money to get them, not to mention time, or to hack them in, right? And so I think when you look at it through this lens, it becomes a lot more understandable as to why players would choose to do this. Not to mention,
Yeah, and like I fully support that argument completely. Like I will never be against that argument. Like that's one of the main reasons why. It's just like people work, lives, all this other stuff outside of Pokemon. Like we don't have like the luxury of just being able to like not have responsibilities. It's kind of changing now because you are seeing like more Pokemon content creators who are able to do this stuff, and like that's literally their job. That's how they earn money. But like that's not the case for everyone.
not all Pokemon are easy to like. Most Pokemon can be obtained without too much trouble, but there are a couple exceptions. Like, so I talked about Urshifu and Landorus and like Cresselia, and all those Pokemon can be caught if you've beaten. By the way, you have to beat most of these games in order to actually get to the point where you can like catch these Pokemon. So let's say you're a player who's like gone back and you beat Sword and Shield, you beat the DLC, you beat Legends Arceus, and now you have these legendaries that you can use. 2 problems, by the way, that we're going to get to after this, but there are some Pokemon that aren't so easy to obtain. Like, so for Pokemon, like some Pokemon want lower stats, which is a problem because they're kind of hard to obtain with lower stats, and there's no way to lower the stats. Now, for the most part, this isn't a huge problem. Like, Cresselia is a Pokemon that often wants 0 attack, like as low attack as possible. Sometimes it also wants as low as speed as possible, which is pretty hard to get. It's like a 1 in 2 times like 2 1 in 15s. So it's like it could take you like a couple days to get a good Cresselia, though once you have one, you should be good for the most part. But there are some Pokemon that are almost impossible, not impossible, but are extremely difficult to obtain legitimately. One of the key ones is Enamorus.
Yeah, he's gonna make the point I made earlier.
Basically, the problem with Enamorus is that Enamorus you can only catch once per game in Legends Arceus. You can only catch it after you've beaten pretty much the entire game. And on top of that, in order to like maximally use Enamorus, you ideally want a 0 attack IV and a 0 speed IV each I actually don't know how IVs work in Legends Arceus because I didn't have to use any of them. But let's be generous and say each is a 1 in 15 chance roughly, or 1 in 16 chance roughly. Bear with me. That Enamorus is only like, it doesn't, if you like run into an Enamorus, catch it, don't like the stats, reset back to like the home screen because you didn't save, that will not work. Enamorus's stats are set when you, I think, when you load into the game.
Yep.
At the very least, it's once per save file, and so your average player, every time they want to have a chance of catching an Enamorus with 0 attack and 0 speed IV, they have to replay the entire game, and that is like not really fair to expect players to do. Not to mention,
yeah, it's like, for me, it's like, I feel like with some of these Pokemon, like, it's like, I don't know what Pokemon's doing. Like, are you wanting this to be like a challenge to really truly be like very best or whatever? Or like, they should, I think with like this DLC coming up, hopefully we have like some of these Pokemon like Urshifu and like Cresselia and all these others. They are available in Scarlet and Violet and like able to be like kind of farmed a bit.
basically trading is off limits. There was a player who always uses legitimate Pokemon, like, and takes a lot of pride in it, and they were disqualified from the World Championships because a Cresselia that they'd been using since, I want to say, Diamond and Pearl, like basically like their childhood Cresselia that they traded for from like a beloved friend, ended up being hacked. They'd used this thing at multiple tournaments over multiple years, like never had any reason to suspect whether or not, like, to even consider that it might be hacked. They found out by being disqualified from the World Championships that it was hacked, and they were so distraught that they're
I mean, I'm not sure the validity of that, just because, like, maybe they never used it in anything else, possibly, but if it's something they've had from Diamond and Pearl and this thing never got flagged, I don't know how true that can actually be, because, like, the main thing getting flagged is home tracker. So I'm thinking maybe this person just cut out home and then put it directly into their game. But, like, I don't see how, if, let's say, in the situation where they've had this Cresselia in multiple games, where it would get flagged via the home tracker. So I'm definitely kind of like skeptical on this.
giving away their entire, like, legitimately obtained shiny Pokemon decks, and they're quitting the game because they were so upset about that. Which brings me to another point. There's no way to tell if a Pokemon is hacked. This is a huge problem. There's no way to identify.
Yes, there is. Okay, so for the stuff, and I showed in the video, for the stuff with like missing home checkers, you 100% can. Is it easy? Kind of, yeah. Because, I mean, all you have to do, and you don't have to have like premium home to do this, all you have to do is upload a Pokemon into Pokemon Home. If the Pokemon is missing the Pokeball and /or the Met location data is completely blanked out, it's missing home tracker data. These are the things that have been getting flagged. If the thing passes like the normal legality checker, as in like it's tradable or whatever, you're going to be fine on that level. But for home trackers, you 100% can check this stuff. And you have been able to check this stuff since home came out. So it's just like, I think it's one of those things where I feel like I don't think he's being like oblivious or anything like that. Like, don't take it that way. But I think it's one of those things where, like, again, if you are genning Pokemon, you need to be knowledgeable on these things. Oh, the dog like stopped and like stared. I don't know what she might have heard something.
Identify. So basically that works against competitive players, because if I have traded for a Pokemon and I want to know whether it's legitimate or not, the only way I can do that is basically by like hiring a hacker who can can tell me whether or not it's hacked in the first place. It's completely unintuitive.
And not necessarily, because again, like, a lot of like the sloppy hacks still make it through constantly. Again, like I said, you can basically tell, and like nothing has changed except for this world, and this world is when they check the home tracker. But I mean, you can basically tell if something's hacked or whether or not by basically trying to trade with it or to battle with it. So again, to say that it's impossible is false, and saying that you need like a Jenner or some PKX to check it is also false, because these are things that you can check constantly. Like, it's not a hard thing to do. Like, to say that you can't check this would mean that like all hacked Pokemon are just freely tradable and usable in battle at all times. Is just not true at all.
The players who know the least about hacking have absolutely no chance. A lot of the stuff, the way that you tell a Pokemon is hacked, they're not looking at data that's publicly visible. They're looking at like, did this Pokemon, did it get like the little token it gets when it transfers through Pokemon Home? This stuff is not.
Again.
Who are you?
Do you have legendary heroes?
No. Why?
Have 1,000.
I mean, I don't know how much traction this video is
available. You can't see this in the Pokemon.
I don't know how much traction this video might get, but if like people do want me, well, I'll just link the video where I literally show you guys how you can check this stuff. It is not hard at all. I might just, now I'm thinking about, I might make a video to basically kind of like demonstrate how you can kind of tell if a Pokemon is hacked or not. A simple ways.
Summary, you need to have external software. So basically, because of that,
that's just
know
not
as
true.
a player,
That's just
you have
not
no
true.
way of knowing whether any of your Pokemon are hacked if you've traded for them. So the only way you can guarantee that a Pokemon is legitimate is if you get it yourself, which again requires potentially playing through a ton of extra games and spending a ton of extra money. 1 second. Excuse me. On top of that, there's a main issue. A lot of the problems with these Pokemon come in legendary Pokemon because they're only available once per game, right? And because of that, let's say I want to use Cresselia at a tournament, right? And it's like I want to use, I don't know, like Icy Wind.
If you know anything about ginning Cresselia and its IVs and stuff, Cresselia is one of the most annoying Pokemon because of the way its encounter happens. So it's super annoying even to just gin a Cresselia and make it like come out the exact way you want to.
You know, Cresselia without Trick Room. I catch my Cresselia, I make sure it has 0 attack IV, and I'm like, great, this rocks, I got my Cresselia. And then later on in the season, I want to use Cresselia again, only now I want to use one with Trick Room, and I want it to have 0 speed IV. I need to play through an entire extra game to get this again. If not just like buy a new, I guess you wouldn't usually buy a new game. You'd need to basically like start a new save file and play through the entire game again, and then go through the trouble of catching an entirely different Cresselia again, which again can take, if you're unlucky, can take a couple days to get a Pokemon with the 2 like lowest IVs, which is, you know, oftentimes important in competitive play. So basically all this to say, it's not that competitive players are evil, it's not that they're lazy, it's that
and there is a certain level of laziness, and I'm only saying a certain level of laziness in the way that they gin. So, I mean, like, if you've seen Kurt's tweets, you'll see a lot of times, like, the way that people gin stuff is just, like, super lazy. Like I said, even though it'll take longer, it is lazy in regards to the fact that you aren't really caring about certain things. Like, one of the things that people do is they'll take, like, a base Pokemon and then just copy other Pokemon on top of it and use that base Pokemon as a template. But when you do that, you have you have some data that people just don't change, and you also have a lot of data that you have to go in and manually fix, as opposed to just using like auto legality mod and just ginning it in. So it's just like, it's things like that where it's just like it's laziness and like kind of like incompetence might be the right word to use here in regards to that. So like to say that it's not laziness is just, no, there's definitely some laziness involved in this stuff. Like the home tracker stuff, like I think it's laziness and arrogance if you did know about these things, because it takes like an extra like 10 minutes. If like, let's say you don't have the game, you're at Worlds, you're like literally thousands of people with these games. You can literally have somebody just like get it in their game, gin it, send it through home, and then just give it to you. Extra, maybe like 20-minute process, if that. So it's just like, yeah, there's a certain level of laziness, but I think that laziness is also tied to just like arrogance of thinking like, I haven't been caught before, nothing's going to happen.
Ask for competitive players, which basically they recommended the World Championships. I believe explicitly they basically said do not trade. So this game about trading and like, you know, catching Pokemon with your friends. Not to mention, not every Pokemon's even available in every game. So all the costs that I mentioned, you might have to double it because you might need both copies, right? Like if you want to use a Pokemon that's native to Scarlet and you have Violet, you got to buy a whole extra game. So you're potentially looking at Scarlet, Violet, Sword, Shield, DLC in both. You could easily use both.
Or just gin properly. Just gin. Like I said, I fully support ginning and stuff like that. Gin properly. Like
Regieleki and Regidrago, right? And then on top of that, Scarlet, Violet, Sword, Shield, DLC in both, and then Legends Arceus. That's 7 games, 6 games and 1 DLC. Not to mention we're going to have Scarlet and Violet DLC. That's about to be relevant. So 6 games, 2 DLC for, what is that, over $400? plus the cost of the Switch, plus the cost of competing. It's like very expensive, not to mention the hours constraint, right? Like not everybody has unlimited time, you know? Like not everybody can afford to like play through, what is that? In theory,
No, yeah, he's
you
right.
have to play through
I haven't even beat
6
Arceus
games,
yet.
And is that right? I think I counted wrong. Sword, Shield, Scarlet, Violet, Legends Arceus. Sorry, 5 games plus 2 DLCs.
BDSP as well.
4 DLCs with the new DLC stuff, right? I don't know. It's to play through for a single tournament, and then you might have to do it all again, at least for some of them, to play through for your next tournament if you want different stats on your legendary Pokemon. So I think the real thing here is that the game needs to be more accessible. There needs to be a way to lower the IVs of Pokemon.
Or just make a simulator. Like I've been saying, like some people say, oh yeah, a simulator is not going to make money. A simulator will make money. A simulator will definitely make money. Because the thing is this, like you're probably going to have like more than two groups of people. You're going to have people who just want to play the simulator, who don't want to play the games, who are going to just like, they're going to funnel in. And you're also going to have people who might just want to play the simulator, but then they want to battle, but then at the same time they're like, okay, I'll still buy the games. And then you're going to have people who just want to play, who will willingly play both. They like the games and they like battling equally. So it's just like, it's a bad argument when I hear people say, oh yeah, they're not going to make a simulator. They're not going to make money from it. It's going to funnel money away from the games. Like, they're going to make money no matter what. That's the thing.
On when they're caught or after they're caught, because that's the real thing holding players back. If we were able to like lower IVs, I think that it would be a lot easier. I mean, you'd still have to like buy all these games and play through all the games, but if you weren't fixed at static IVs when you caught a Pokemon, if you could actually lower them, I think it would fix a lot of issues within.
One of the things they should have done is they should have had the DLC come out before Worlds, and let's say potentially the DLC had like a lot of these legendaries in it. That would have helped out a lot and been a great benefit to players, because like the Sword and Shield DLC 2, I think it came out I could be wrong. It came out before they made like all these legendaries open and usable. And also a lot of those legendaries weren't usable until the DLC came out. But you could catch almost all of them through the Dynamax Adventures. So I think like that helped with accessibility. But like this, it does kind of like hurt a little bit.
Like within the competitive scene's accessibility, right? Like, of course, it would be really nice if like all the Pokemon like were easier to obtain, right? Like that would be great, but I don't think that's a realistic ask. Like that's basically being like bring back national decks, which isn't really my take personally. I don't know. The whole thing is kind of messy and kind of tricky, and I don't know if I explain all my points as eloquently as I would have liked to, but I hope this makes some sense, right? It's not that players are like looking to hack in Pokemon because, you know, they're like evil and scheming or anything. It's that accessibility is really bad. It's really hard. And, you know, I'm lucky in that, like, this is my job, so I can justify, like,
yeah,
oh, like, I need to take today to, like, train up my team or, like, reset for a Chi Yu, right? Like, it's, like, I can justify that, but not everyone has unlimited free time, right? Not everybody, I don't know. And so, like, basically, it makes me sad to think that there are people out there who can't really compete in competitive Pokemon, not because they aren't good enough, but because it's so hard to get the Pokemon legitimately, right? And so I understand why players choose to hack on their Pokemon, even though I don't do it myself, because it is so hard, right? And of course, like, as things stand, I think if you're playing competitive Pokemon, you shouldn't be hacking in your Pokemon just because, like, you're always risking disqualification, and, like, that alone is enough to not do it. But it would be great if players didn't feel like they had to choose between, I don't know, like, hacking in their Pokemon or sinking, like, 40 hours of work into a single team, right? It shouldn't take that long, but with bad luck resetting, if you want, like, specific stuff, if you want, like, I don't know, like, if you haven't already beaten these games, it's a lot of extra work. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that this is going to be taken out of context and argued in a really negative.
No, I think he's making
bad faith. It's a bad faith.
I think he's making pretty good arguments that I think that, like, he is making them in good faith. I think that, like I said, some of the points about, like, the checking thing, I think it's just like a lack of, like, knowledge on some of these things. But I don't think he's actually doing this thing in, like, bad faith. I mean, hopefully, I mean, maybe he'll watch this and, like, I have a conversation with him. I actually, like, geez, I'm gonna sound like a fanboy, even though I'm really not. I mean, like, I actually hung out with him at Worlds when it was in Tennessee. because he's friends with like my friend with a mutual friend. We actually like watched the World Championships like in the same like. I mean, I think he's like 2 seats over from me, and we talked for a while, and like super chill dude and stuff like that. It was just he didn't give off like that arrogance of like he's probably like one of the most famous people in Pokemon, but he didn't give off that vibe of like, oh, I'm this person or this status or whatever. It was super chill. I mean,
many times. But my brain's a little off, so to forgive me. Bad faith direction, but I don't know. I feel like it's important to talk about. I feel like a lot of the discussions around genning and hacking in Pokemon are just so reductive and so like just not really. I'm so sorry. I wish I was better with words right now. I'm really tried. I hope you get what I'm trying to say here. I really tried to approach this with like general grace and like general, I don't know, like caution. I really tried to like do this in a way that was proper. I don't know if I succeeded, but I hope that some of you at least like understand that this is a more complex issue than it's often made out to be, and that like ultimately it's the player's responsibility. It's the player's responsibility to bring Pokemon that are legitimate.
Yes.
But it would be really great if players didn't feel like they had. It'd be great if it was easier to get Pokemon, right? If it was easier to get legitimate Pokemon, that would be great for everybody. The Pokemon company doesn't like disqualifying people. Players don't like being disqualified, right? Yeah, I don't know. It would be really great if it were easy.